Hello and welcome back to Session 2 of our short course on constructing a self-presentation in English. This session is going to focus on the subject of describing yourself and what you do. That is, finding the best language to talk about yourself and your enterprise, constructing a clear, simple description of yourself and your business. So first of all, what is an elevator pitch? That's a commonly used term in English for this kind of short self-presentation. Well, it's a very brief speech, no more than 30 to 60 seconds, and actually some sources you'll find say as little as 20 to 30 seconds. That's actually based on the length of an elevator ride. That's how the term got started. How long does it take you to go from the ground floor to the third floor, or wherever you're going, when you've got somebody trapped with you and you have to, they have to listen to what you have to say for a short amount of time. It's an opportunity you seize, in other words, and you make the most of. Nowadays, obviously when elevators aren't everywhere, the idea is more based on the length of modern attention spans and the fragmentation of time in daily life. You know how it is with the way we communicate these days in short texts, emails, voice messages, and so forth. People are growing less and less able, sadly, to concentrate on a longer thread of information, if you will. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I think it's not a terribly good thing personally, but either way, what that means is we've got to learn how to present ourselves in a short span of time that will keep somebody's attention. So whatever the specific situation you have, whether it's an elevator, whether you're seeing somebody in a hallway, on a break in a meeting, what have you, the elevator speech is about grabbing the attention of the person you're talking to and engaging their interest long enough to get your foot in the proverbial door. And what you want to be talking about is yourself, your company, what you offer, what makes you unique, what problem or problems your company solves better than any other. In other words, the elevator speech or elevator pitch answers the question, why should I be interested in what you have to offer? To answer that question, it's essential to be clear and succinct about who you are and about what your business is about. Such succinct clarity is something that comes about only through reflection and practice at expression. Nobody, I want you to know, nobody comes up with that kind of succinct, clear expression right away. Nobody can do it just off the bat. It takes reflection on the question of who you are as an entrepreneur, having a clear vision of your own self as an entrepreneur, and of what your business offers that's unique. Perhaps you've heard it said that clear writing requires clear thinking. And this is true as well for this kind of self-presentation. Once you're clear about who you are and about what your company has to offer, then you've cleared, I think, perhaps the most significant hurdle in producing a good self-presentation in English. So, what you need to do then, and what we'll talk more about, is using simple, direct language. Not using fancy vocabulary, large words, complicated sentences. Use of the active voice. X does Y, so that the language is vigorous and it gives the hearer an idea of action, doing something. Avoid the passive voice as much as possible. The passive voice is is good for some settings, and I find that actually Finnish speakers of English use it a fair amount. But for a self-presentation, it doesn't really work because one wants the focus to be on oneself and on one's business. And so you have to use a subject and action verb sentence construction. With regard to using short, vigorous words in your descriptions, perhaps you know this already, but if you don't, English often has two ways of saying the same thing. One that uses a word derived from Latin or Greek, and another that's derived from Anglo-Saxon, the Germanic language of at least some of the peoples who populated what is now England primarily in the early Middle Ages. The Latin or Greek-based word may sound more impressive or learned or scientific, but it also tends to lack the kind of vigor, the kind of punch that you want in an elevator speech. It can even sound like jargon, and by that I mean, the kind of specialized in language that only a small number of people use when they have the same profession. Or, even worse, that you're trying to sound sophisticated. Believe me, that the use of clear, simple language, clear, direct, simple language will provide you with the kind of impression of sophistication that you need. So both of these difficulties, using the passive voice and using big, complicated words, run the risk of making the person you're talking to lose interest in what you're talking about. And so, if you're interested in learning more about this point, about clear, vigorous language, I suggest that you read the English essayist George Orwell's essay, Politics and the English Language, especially the final session, and you'll see that really what Orwell talks about is how modern people use language and how an over scientific, if you will, approach to language in everyday life has caused language to lose much of its meaning and its vigor. I'm not arguing against science, of course, but the question is more of how we communicate with each other today in ways that get our meaning across most directly and most simply. You'll find the link to Orwell's essay in the conclusion of this session. Now, of course, the extra dimension to all of this, and I'd say really in any language what I've just said applies, but the extra dimension that speakers of English as a second or third or fourth, whatever language, that they face is, of course, the linguistic dimension, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. Am I choosing the most appropriate words for what I want to say? Am I saying things in a grammatically correct way? And actually, this is the thing that I find most of my native Finnish-speaking students worry about the most, but they don't have to, because they really do know the grammar. Am I pronouncing what I say in a clear, intelligible way? I mean, nobody expects you to speak with a British or an American accent or an Australian accent. They only expect you to speak so that they understand what you're saying. Now, I want you to know as well that native speakers of English face these same issues, particularly when it comes to the delivery of their pitch. In a high-pressure situation, people generally tend to speak more quickly than they think they do. And this unintentionally speeded up speech is often difficult to follow and understand, especially for hearers for whom English may not be a first language. So, practice of your pitch will allow you to hear yourself, to evaluate the pace of what you're saying. In general, if you think you're speaking too slowly, you're probably speaking at just about the right pace. So, to sum up, There are 2 tasks in coming up with a clear, succinct description of yourself and your business. First, drafting the descriptions, paying attention, of course, to vocabulary and grammar. And then second, once you have descriptions you're happy with, practicing saying the descriptions. You can do that either in front of somebody you trust or by recording them and listening to them, paying attention to their understandability. You'll put yourself in the listener's place and ask yourself, would I understand what I'm saying if I were the one who needed to listen to this? Now I'll add here that sometimes it can be difficult to listen to one's own voice, especially for the first time. That's certainly been the case for me. But it's something that you overcome over time. You'll find it gets easier and easier to listen to yourself. So don't let that initial strangeness, perhaps, of the sound of your own voice put you off. So, tasks for this week. Task number 1. Brainstorm for an hour about the best ways to describe clearly and concisely your business and your function or your place within it, in no more than 2 sentences. I ask that you use no more than 2 sentences because this will give you practice at being concise in what you say about yourself. It's harder to come up with a short description than it is a long description. You have to think about it more. And so I'm asking you to use this opportunity to think about yourself and your business. You likely have had to come up with a description of your enterprise during your education as an entrepreneur. Such a description could be a good place to begin. Perhaps you've already had to try your hand at writing an elevator pitch for a class or a competition. All of these are good places to start, as is simply sitting down and writing as many ways as possible of describing yourself and your business. Regardless of where you begin, use this exercise as a chance to think afresh about your business and your place, your functions within it. And task number 2. Once you've settled upon your sentences, practice delivering them until you're able to say them comfortably and at a pace that allows for maximum clarity. It's best if you have someone listening to your delivery and who can offer honest, constructive feedback on its pace and pronunciation. In other words, somebody you can trust. However, if it's difficult to find somebody who can fill that role for you, then go ahead, please, and record the pitch, and then listen to it, and note what you hear that you might be able to improve upon. All right, that's it for session 2. See you with session 3 in a moment. Thank you.